long before man conquered the earth and the pumpkin spice latte. An ancient evil stood deep in the dark South American rainforest, with wickedly long, sharp fangs and claws as long as a man's fingers. This ancient beast is so evil that its very name is a sin, the sloth. Just in time for Halloween, join us this October 20th for a spooky International Sloth Day celebration.
What do you mean we missed International Sloth Day? Oh, haha, yeah, no, we were too slow for International Sloth Day, whatever. No, screw it, you know what, it's fine. I got the cape, we're fine, I'm just gonna do it, we're gonna do it for Halloween. It's fine, it's Halloween.
Just in time for Halloween, join us.
We missed Halloween too? What the do you mean we missed Halloween too? Welcome back to Animal Mythstories, the show where we dive into some of the common myths and misconceptions surrounding animals and ask, just how positive are we really? I'm your host, Trevor Suich, and today we're diving into one of my favorite misconceptions, that out of all of the animals in the animal kingdom, no animal is quite as cuddly or as lazy as a sloth. Except for maybe pandas. But I fucking hate pandas, so we're not talking about them. Anyways, are sloths truly cuddly, lazy balls of adorableness, or instead terrifying vampiric monstrosities with epic survival strategies? I spent years of my animal educator career working alongside sloths, both at the zoo and while traveling around the country. I've even had one as a roommate while traveling, which I absolutely cannot recommend. They take forever in the bathroom and refuse to share the covers. No matter where in the country I went, I was always amazed with how many people love sloths, yet hardly seem to know anything about them. Aside from Tampa Bay's Chris Cato, that man is a f***ing sloth expert and I will always love him for that. I mean, think about it. Sloths are literally everywhere in pop culture, and yet people know so little about them outside of this misguided belief that sloths are somehow cute and cuddly. I mean, how did this become this? Well, there's a lot to dig into, so let's start at the beginning. Sloths have been fascinating Western societies for much longer than the past 10 years. In fact, the first Western depictions of sloth date all the way back to 1557 with André Thevet, a French Franciscan friar on expedition to French Antarctique. No, Maddie, no, there's no penguins there. It's modern day Rio de Janeiro. Interestingly, the name sloth isn't used frequently in literature until around 1610. Instead, Thevet described the animals as the out, or authi, the name given by the Tupinamba people of Brazil. He described it as a little bear with a head almost like that of a baby, which sounds adorable and then somehow became this. As Bob Ross once said, we don't make mistakes, we have happy accidents. Suffice to say, Bob Ross has not seen this picture. Anywho, allegedly Thevet was gifted a sloth as a pet and wrote that he watched it for roughly 20 days wherein he never saw it eat or drink, likely because, you know, they sleep a lot. Thevet thus proposed the totally rational theory that sloths survived by obtaining sustenance from the air. These observations tell us two important things. One, the 1550s were an incredibly boring time to be alive, and two, Thevet was a bad sloth owner. Seriously, someone call Sarah McLachlan and ye old SPCA on this man. In the arms of the angels, fly away. Another naturalist at the time, José de Anchieta, called the same creature preguiça in 1560, which is Portuguese for laziness and likely kicked off the shift towards the name sloth in English.
Preguiça.
Moving along in time, we get to the Beyoncé of the 18th century naturalist movement, Georges Louis Leclerc Comte de Buffon, who in 1749 had this to say about our boy the sloth. Slowness, habitual pain, and stupidity are the result of this strange and bungled conformation. These sloths are the lowest form of existence. One more defect would have made their lives impossible. God! By 1750 standards, Georges Louis just burned sloths worse than Obi-Wan burned Anakin on Mustafar. Fortunately for sloths, after being absolutely annihilated by Georges Louis, we keep steadily marching forward in time to get to the natural world's first big facelift for Western society. Romanticism. The Romantic movement was an artistic, literary, musical, and intellectual movement originating in Europe around the end of the 18th century, and brought with it a sort of idealization of nature. Suddenly, it was hip and cool to appreciate the natural world as opposed to just thinking it was terrifying. While we don't find a lot of While we don't find a lot of interest in sloths in general during this time period, we do see the beginnings of a cultural shift towards interest in animals in general. They were no longer this, but more so this, with just a bit of this. Sloths didn't seem to go mainstream though until we hit around 2010, when a video of a man in Costa Rica helping a three-toed sloth across the road went viral. It took off even more when someone re-uploaded the video to the always inspirational I Believe I Can Fly, the song that reminds us that basketball players should never be allowed to act. Arguably, most of the credit for our modern day appreciation of sloths is thanks to the one, the only, the Lucy Cook. Lucy Cook, described by The Atlantic as the literal Steven Spielberg of sloth filmmaking, gave a new hope to sloths with a short Meet the Sloths Vimeo that went viral back in 2010. Since then, Cook has produced both television and full-fledged documentaries and award-winning books all about sloths, pushing them further and further into mainstream media. While it is true that Kristen Bell's sloth-related meltdown on Ellen did help push sloths further into mainstream media, the real heroes of the sloth renaissance are Lucy Cook and others like her who loved sloths before it was cool. Plus, I refuse to attribute sloth popularity to an ugly cry. So clearly, sloths have gone through quite the image rehabilitation throughout Western history. But now that we're caught up with our modern day sloth obsession, are we really obsessed with them for the right reasons? Well, let's explore our two key misconceptions. Perhaps the most important question we should be asking here is, are sloths actually cuddly? Are they this, or are they this? As you've probably ascertained, both are indeed sloths, but it looks like someone wore their sassy pants today. To speak from my own experiences, some sloths like Harry over here are super chill and absolutely love people. Others like Coda and Daisy are less friendly, but don't mind hanging out with people once they get to know them. And others like this guy, well, they're the ones their peers voted most likely to be featured on Cops. Now, despite this video spawning some of the greatest memes the internet has ever seen, I'd be doing sloth conservation an injustice if I didn't take time to point out that the man seen in this video is a highly trained professional rescuing a sloth in Panama. That's Nestor Correa, president of the Pan American Conservation Association, or APPC, which is basically the conservation organization for Panama. They do incredible work, and if you ever visit Panama, I highly recommend you check out the legitimate sanctuary that they run. Not a Tiger King sanctuary, a legitimate sanctuary. Big difference. All of that aside, this video always terrifies me because I have been on the wrong end of an angry sloth before, and it is horrifying. They are super sharp, super strong, and super determined. Imagine, if you will, a slow-motion shark attack, or a struggle snuggle with Freddy Krueger, or better yet, don't imagine any of that, live your life, make good choices, and get away trauma-free. Basically, the moral of the story is, sloths are kind of like people. It all depends upon how well they know you and what their personality's like. If you've got a friend that enjoys contact, for instance, you can probably give them a hug, maybe even a cuddle. If you break into a stranger's home and start cuddling with them though, well, that may end differently.
Hey babe, what's going on?
I don't know.
Now, to be fair, trying to hug a wild sloth is less like trying to cuddle with a stranger and arguably more like trying to cuddle with a slightly sleepy wood chipper, or getting your drunk friend with French nails into a taxi before the bar closes. Now, I'm not trying to say that sloths are terrifying, but these teeth and claws are not to be taken lightly. For instance, this is a model of a two-toed sloth skull, the type of sloth you'd usually find in a zoo. Now, despite being a herbivore, two-toed sloths have extremely prominent pseudo-canines that look less like standard herbivore teeth and more so like something you might find in Satan's office supplies. The reason for this unique, if horrifying, set of chompers is that sloth teeth need to stay razor sharp to cut through a variety of tough vegetation. To maintain the sharpness, sloth teeth lack enamel, the hard outer coating of teeth. Instead, they have high-crowned, open-rooted teeth that grow continuously throughout their life and grind down against one another, almost like self-sharpening scissors. As for the claws, Well, while sloths aren't big fighters, they still live in a rough neighborhood known as the rainforest, and those claws can be plenty sharp. There is some limited evidence that they do use their claws to defend themselves, typically through intimidation, but their primary method of defense is their natural camouflage and glacial movement speed. Basically, don't move a lot and you're harder to see. But does this actually mean that sloths are lazy? Yes. But not in the ways that you'd think. For sloths, lazy is a survival tactic, one that's been passed down by their ancestors over 64 million years. Turns out I've been doing it wrong this entire time. In truth, it's not really fair to call sloths lazy. They have a crazy unique design that influences everything about how they live their lives, including their trademark slow movement. For instance, the muscles and nerves of a sloth have developed slower movements and reaction times than other species. A sloth literally cannot help but be slow. By having such slow movements and reaction times, it's easier for a sloth to vanish into the forest canopy and thus hide from predators. To emphasize just how well sloths can disappear, one study reported that their researchers could only visually identify the sloths they were studying 5% of the time, despite the fact that the sloths were all wearing radio collars. While on branches, sloths in high gear move up to around a whopping 15 feet per minute, though on average that's closer to about 13. On the ground though, they max out at just about 9.8 feet per minute, which lets them really milk the amount of time they get to mess up your TV shoot.
What's exactly happening now, Trevor?
Are you a subterranean sloth now? Where are you going, buddy?
That's not panic in my voice, that's just excitement because children are such a fussing. Unlike a lot of their rainforest friends who move about via brachiation or swinging from branch to branch, sloth movement in treetops is super unique. Rather than swinging, their movement is much more akin to walking, even when upside down. Kind of makes sense given what we mentioned about their slow reaction times. Oh. All of this leads back to another similar property of the sloth, something that the vet noticed but failed to understand. Sloth digestion rates are I would like to formally apologize to sloths, sloth researchers, and the entire human race for my horrible jokes, but I'm not going to. Seriously though, sloth digestion rates are so slow, it's crazy. To put things in perspective, most mammals don't take longer than 1 to 2 days to fully pass a meal. Sloths, however, can take anywhere between 11 to 30 days to fully pass the leaves they eat. Crazier still, they only need to defecate about once a week, typically while Sir David Attenborough is there to film it.
This is a very unusual sight. A sloth in a hurry. It wants to defecate, and the only place it's happy doing that, oddly enough, is down on the ground.
Look, I know he's British and I know he's a legend, but how does any one man have the power to make a sloth taking a in the woods sound classy? That's just not fair. Anyways, the point of all of this is that yes, sloths are very slow, but again, that's by design, not so much by choice. So now that we've finished our deep dive into sloths, let's take an up-close look at our 2 misconceptions on our positivity meter. With 1 being an absolute lie and 5 being a complete truth, just how positive are we about the cuddly and lazy nature of the sloth? Well, for cuddliness, I'm gonna give our boys the sloth a 1 out of 5. Now, before everyone with the big live, laugh, love signs and Instagram accounts of your food starts sending me hate mail, hear me out. Sure, some sloths may be cuddly and chill around people. Some of the sloths I used to work with are great examples of that. But that's entirely related to the individual sloth, not to the species as a whole. If you walk up to a strange sloth and give them a cuddle, it's honestly a coin toss between them shrugging it off or deciding that your face looks tasty. As for the are sloths lazy question, well, I'll score that one a begrudging 2 out of 5. If we define laziness as minimizing movement, then sure, it's pretty accurate, but that's an overall unfair interpretation. A sloth literally cannot move fast thanks to their biology and neurology. They do their best to speed up when they have to, but moving fast kind of avoids their ability to hide from predators. I mean, these guys are legit so slow that algae grows in their fur. Sloths can vanish into the rainforest faster than people's respect for me every time I say I have a YouTube channel. So it's not so much that they're slow, it's just more so that they're not designed to move very fast. So that's our rating for the mythos of the cuddly and lazy sloth, but what do you think? Cuddly, lazy stereotype of bad white girl merchandise everywhere, or brilliantly designed beastie of terror? Well, be sure to share your thoughts and sloth-related questions with us in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, please help support our channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for more Animal Mythstories.